The Last of Us was made at Naughty Dog. We have a history of doing very narrative-based games, even though they're like action-based games. So then it was trying to take a lot of those learnings, understanding of here's how you make this kind of game, and what if we apply it to a different genre? A darker, more serious, more gritty, more grounded story.
If I get into trouble down there, you make every shot count.
I got this.
We didn't know then how big the game was going to be. We didn't know how well it would be received by literally millions. We certainly had no idea that it would ever become a show. But we knew that the story that we were about to tell was something special.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me.
I'm a video game fan. I play all sorts of video games. And the thing that The Last of Us had is a truly great story centered around a great relationship and great characters. It was miles beyond anything else. That's popping really nicely.
The movie thing just never felt quite right, so it was nice when Craig and I had lunch one day and we're like, what if it wasn't a movie? What if it was a TV show?
Your watch is broken.
We are telling the story of The Last of Us, but we're also telling more of the story of The Last of Us. There is so much in between. And there are places where we diverge, but we diverge in a way that is true and honest to the spirit of the original.
If I'm taking you with me, there's some rules you gotta follow. You do what I say when I say it. We clear?
When you're adapting for a book, there isn't something visual to go off of or a sound to capture. These characters are iconic in a cinematic way already. So now it's like doubly difficult of a job. You need to find someone that can elevate it or change it or make it their own in a really interesting way.
We'll get through this.
Pedro brings Joel to life. It's such a joy, because it's a different Joel. It's not the same Joel that Troy Baker brought to life in the game, but he's so intriguing and interesting and charming that I'm finding myself when we're watching takes, I'm captivated by it.
Vaccines, miracle cures, none of it works, ever.
Fuck you, man. I didn't ask for this.
You and me both.
It was such a unique experience playing this character because there's so much based on the original source material. Troy Baker's performance, the design of the character, his movements, his sounds, and then bring out whatever is within me, discover what I can bring to it and what I can learn and what it can teach me.
Is it everything you hoped for?
Jury's still out, but man, you can't deny that view.
Choosing Ellie was the scariest part of all of this.
Give me my knife. Asshole!
We're like, oh man, we're gonna have a hard time finding someone that can match Ashley Johnson, who did such a phenomenal job on the game. In a lot of ways, helped shape who that character is.
Any sudden moves and I put one right between your eyes. Ditto for Buddy Boy.
This audition for Bella Ramsey came in, and there's such an authenticity to her. It didn't feel like I'm looking at an actor trying to be this character.
Check me out, man! This is so cool!
Ellie was definitely a skill that I felt like I already had in me. We're both quite sarcastic. We both love a pun. She's more of a badass than me. Like, she's the badass that I aspire to be, but I'm not quite there.
People are gonna come looking for me. Let me out or you're gonna pay, motherfuckers!
It felt like I was looking already at the character. I was looking at Ellie. There is this intensity inside of her, and it just feels like it's just ready to like explode outward.
No!
There's a humanity to her, a compassion, a sass, an intelligence. Bella and Ellie are smarter than all of us. And so it was just a match made in heaven.
There's no halfway with this. We finished what we started.
People would say she has like an old soul, but it felt more than that. She sort of has the essence of Ellie already in her. How she moves and how she acts and just how she interpreted the part. It could not have been more perfectly cast.
In the game, within like single minutes, the outbreak is hit and there's chaos. And here we said, okay, we could actually slow things down.
You got 7 minutes.
Your t-shirt's inside out.
It was important for us to present the audience with a Sarah that we felt we could follow for the rest of the series. She's almost the protagonist until disaster strikes. And that is something that, of course, we were directly inspired by the game.
You're gonna be okay, all right?
You can see the love that they have for each other.
Don't fall asleep.
Of course I won't. It's too riveting. And I think that just inevitably makes Sarah's ending even sadder because it's just knowing how important she was to him and the loss of that connection for him that he then carries throughout the show. Just adds something special.
We were lucky enough to be able to shoot that part of the storyline first to get things started for me and for the character.
Tommy, help me! Joe.
I think Sarah's passing weighs extremely heavy on Tommy.
Head to the river, I'll find a way.
The influence of his brother and the darkness that lives in him is enveloping Tommy. And if he doesn't go out on his own, then that's what life will be.
Gabe Luna does such a great job of being this charismatic guy you want to be with.
What the fuck you doing here? I came here to save you.
It was hard not to be familiar with The Last of Us, just knowing what it means to me as a player and an audience member, and knowing what I want to translate and get across to the audience, what I would bring to it.
Adios, big brother.
We'll get her to your crew at the State House. They give us everything that we want. If not, we kill her. Deal.
Really? That fast?
Tess was a character that we did quite a bit of expansion on, and there's quite a few differences.
No, I promised Robert that you wouldn't hurt him, but I would very much like for you to hurt him.
I held on to Anna Torv for as long as I could before she had to leave us. One of the best scene partners I've ever had.
We get to spend a little bit more intimate time with them in a way that was only hinted at the game, and here we get to really kind of experience it.
I never ask you for anything, not to feel the way I felt, not to you shut the fuck up because I don't have time. This is your chance.
She also feels like if they do this one thing, that can potentially save everyone. She can in some way be forgiven or redeemed for all the shitty things that she's done.
We are going home.
It's not my fucking home!
In the game, it was the military chasing us, but we felt like we couldn't sustain that, so we needed another way to take Tess out.
All of the infected come in and then they all stop. And this one man walks steadily towards her.
I believe it's actually more dramatic and kind of interesting than what happens in the game, and it makes Tess even more active to sacrifice herself in order to give Joel and Ellie a chance at escape. Marlene is our constant that connects the game and the show. And you get to, again, expand, and you get to see the story that's hinted at the game.
Is this real? I believe it is.
Marlene's the gift that keeps giving. I first met Marlene almost exactly 10 years ago in 2012, and it was to audition for the video game.
Having Merle Dandridge, the original Marlene, be our Marlene and bring it this fierceness that the world was already sort of introduced to, and for that to be fully realized through her performance, through the show, was an amazing thing to behold.
Let me go. You just come after her.
We talked about using Bill as a way to follow through time and see how things changed between 2003 and 2023.
Not today, you New World Order jackboot fucks.
I was gratified to see, once again, the industry has recognized that I can use tools and drive a vehicle, and I'm grateful.
Who the hell's Frank?
He was my partner.
In the game, you never see Frank alive. It's only through watching Bill and watching his reaction when he finds Frank's body that you understand, and you put it together that these two are romantically involved. And immediately, one of the first conversations Craig and I had about this episode was like seeing Frank.
It was this unexpected, beautiful love story in this very sort of bleak world.
Older means we're still here.
Frank and Bill are a couple.
You were my purpose.
In a world filled with so much sadness and horror, these two were able to live a pretty fulfilling life. And then for Joel coming in and then seeing his friend of his that he knew that is now gone, it's a reminder of the stakes.
I used to hate the world, and I was happy when everyone died. But I was wrong.
The other thing that was kind of exciting is seeing those iconic outfits for Joel and Ellie. In fact, you see Frank wearing Joel's iconic flannel, and then because they have to clean up and then put new clothes on, I was like, oh, there's an opportunity to get them in their iconic outfit, get them in their iconic truck. I really like that stuff. Craig's like, okay, I've been thinking about Sam, and just hear me out. I know it's a big change, but what if he were deaf? And I said, you motherfucker. That's so good, it makes me upset that I didn't think about it.
I know that the game didn't actually have a deaf character, but I was cast to become Sam. And I'm deaf, which is something different. Everything is still possible. With the change, it makes the problems they face special.
I am the bad guy because I did a bad guy thing.
I had a lot of source material from the game, so I was able to pull a lot of inspiration and context from the game. They sort of just let me play, and they trusted that I kind of knew his backstory and his journey.
Sam. What did I do? For Henry and Sam, Neil's story made it very clear that you cannot escape fate. In fact, the more you try and the more ruin and hurt you cause to protect this person, the more brutal it will be when you lose anyway. It's the same theme we see over and over and over as the series unfolds with Joel and Ellie and all of these characters.
If you just keep going, you find something new to fight for.
When you spend a whole year with a group of people, you become this really tight network. Everyone is so passionate. It's such like a shared vision.
Do you trust me?
The audience encompasses everyone. People who have played the game, people who have never heard of the game. I try and think of everybody, and I think of how they will feel in the moment watching this.
And we feel like as long as we honor the things we want, it will be a good show, and that fans will be on this crazy journey with us.
If you don't think there's hope for the world, why bother going on?
Keep going for family.
When you're adapting something, you have to make quite a few changes. But then there were also times where it was the game, but also our show, like parallel universes touching. Well before we ever rolled any film, we gathered together a small army of people to work on how to get the clickers right. And getting the clickers right means that people who have played the game will go, that's it. And people who haven't played the game are gonna go, oh my God, because that's how we all felt the first time we encountered them. So I know the way they stand, I know the way they walk, I know what their heads look like, I know what they sound like, I know what they scream like. We thought it was really important to start with practical effects.
We were looking at real reference of fungus and mushrooms and trying to integrate some of that into the paint schemes. We had about 5 stages, going from the very subtle 3-dimensional veins on the head, gradually getting more intricate and more extreme to larger appliances.
I get called over to look at the full prosthetics for the clicker. And these 2 guys are in the full suits and they're moving like clickers and they're even making the sounds. And I got tears in my eyes. I couldn't believe it. Like, again, that people at the top of their craft have honored this thing that we've created for a video game to such a degree. And it looked so good and it was so creepy and beautiful at the same time. And it captured a lot of the things we were trying to do with the game, but it was there in real life.
It ends the way it ends.
One of the primary differences between the game and the show, which I think people have probably noticed by now, is that there's a lot fewer encounters with infected because there's no gameplay when you're watching a show. But sometimes you just need to see how big it all is. So we knew we needed this enormous spectacle.
There's a cul-de-sac sequence that's very famous in the game. A Jeep that has crashed into a house starts to sink into the basement of a house and releases a hive of infected.
It was just physically an incredibly challenging thing for everyone. For Pedro, who's running up and down a street, for Bella and Lamar and Kevon, who are running up and down the street, and hundreds of people in costumes. The prosthetics people had like a factory going.
3, 2, 1, action.
Oh, that don't sound good.
We were debating quite a bit whether we want to have a bloater in this season or not, but Craig called me. He's like, okay, what if we did the bloater?
The bloater is sort of the biggest boss in the infected universe, and he comes out and just rips people to shreds.
Every department comes together to deliver something that feels real and visceral. It was an enormous undertaking for everyone.
Is this really all they had to worry about?
Boys, movies.
There's this moment where Joel goes to tell Ellie that he's leaving her and she bears her soul to him and he turns away. And that scene is perhaps the most famous scene from the game.
Well, I'm sorry. I trust him better than I trust myself.
Stop with the bullshit.
The general execution of it was something that I thought was important we stick to exactly, because it is the moment where Ellie admits to something that Joel can't admit to, which is that she's afraid and that he makes her less afraid. And what Joel doesn't know how to tell her is she makes him more afraid.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everybody fucking except for you. So don't tell me that I'd be safe with somebody else, because the truth is, I would just be more scared.
Nothing could hurt Ellie more than the only person she has left in this world not wanting her around, which again was beautifully acted by Bella and Pedro. It was like, I didn't envy them, so trying to like do a scene that like exists in the game and is like seared into people's mind, and they made it their own, and it's just as beautiful.
You're not my daughter. And I sure as hell ain't your dad.
At the end of episode 6, Joel is in terrible shape, and in fact is telling Ellie to leave him because he's not gonna make it. And Ellie has to make that decision. And in the moment she hesitates, we are brought back in time to an Ellie we have not met.
So where are we going? Secret.
The metaphor for this episode was like, what is it like to skip school in the post-apocalypse? And in the game, there was all these kind of interactive vignettes of like trying to connect Ellie and Riley.
I want new pictures of us.
Craig was very adamant that we need to hang on to that stuff. Like that stuff was for him so interesting and fresh that it was okay to have an episode mostly about these two girls and this innocent romance.
Don't go. They are able to do things that they're not used to doing. They're able to be very childlike, and I think Ellie and Riley have been forced, living in this world, to grow up faster than other people their age.
There she is!
Riley is played by Storm Reed. We had to find somebody that was able to not only be on Bella's level in terms of talent, but also somebody that we think would have the upper hand on Ellie. And that's a tall order, and Storm delivers.
Why did you bring me here?
I wanted to say goodbye. The setting that they're in, it limits them, but they like to think that they're limitless, which I love. So they have a really interesting dynamic, and I loved working with Storm to create that.
We could just be all poetic and shit and lose our minds together.
Most of the journey, you're playing this archetype that you've seen in a lot of games. And then he gets injured so badly that now the roles have to shift. And the protector is now Ellie. And now she has to look after him. So in the game, at this point, you play as Ellie. And it's this really wonderful moment when you watch people play it, because they almost always say, oh my God, I'm Ellie. And so it's something totally unique to video games. So it was like the challenge for us was like, how do we match or top that? So the key actually was expanding David.
I need to know you're with me.
Ellie is forced to survive on her own. And how? Violence. David says something to her that's absolutely true, because he sees it in her, because he knows it's in him. He says, you have a violent heart.
And I should know. I've always had a violent heart.
All of her instincts kicked in, and she had to be smart as well, because David was smart, so she had to be smarter.
Joel finds her and she's covered in blood. And all he can say is this thing that he hasn't said in 20 years, which is,
it's okay, baby girl.
Which is what he called his daughter. And at that moment, again, watching the performance between Pedro and Bella, I was bawling when I finally got to see that scene.
When we meet Anna, we don't exactly know who she is, but we do see sort of this pregnant woman running through the woods. And it sort of brings the story around to meeting Ellie for the first time and sort of how she was first brought into this world.
Yeah, you tell him. You fucking tell him, Ellie.
Anna, played by Ashley Johnson, who is the true beginning of Ellie because Ashley played Ellie in the games.
There was a special level of it for me to play the mother of this character that I care so deeply about.
Find someone to bring her up and make sure that she's safe.
There's something just beautiful about that connection of like almost like a passing of the baton.
It's entirely because she's a fantastic actor. That's 98% of it. But there's an important 2%, which is that she's also Ellie's voice. Subconsciously, for so many of us who know the game, it is like, there's this genetic connecting between the two Ellies that we know.
Her name is Ellie. It shows how strong Ellie is, of where she came from and what she had to go through, and that even her mother had such a fight to live.
We push forward to see that Ellie is still struggling with the events of episode 8. And Joel's method of trying to get through to Ellie is reminding her about all the fun times they've had. And it's not working. And we really just follow the game here very closely because it's so beautiful, where they encounter a giraffe.
It's a joyful moment for Ellie and for Joel. Like, Joel seeing Ellie finally be sort of a glimmer of who she used to be after the trauma that she faced. But also it's still bittersweet for Ellie because everything that she'd experienced hasn't just gone away. It's just this moment of beauty that it's so precious it's almost sad.
It was amazing because we had a real giraffe, and I'd never touched a giraffe before. I'd never seen its enormously long black tongue.
Come on! And just interacting with them and being so in awe of their magnitude. It's like a spiritual experience almost, being so close to such a magnificent animal.
The beauty of it is such that we understand why the ice melts between them. There's just a moment of awe and wonder in this world still.
Maybe there's nothing bad out there, but so far there's always been something bad out there.
We're still here though.
The ending is something that people have been arguing about and debating for over a decade. And I'm thrilled to be able to have an entire new generation of people arguing about it and debating it. Should Joel have done what he did?
Swear to me that everything you said about the Fireflies is true. She knows deep down that he's not telling the truth, but she can't let herself believe it because it's too painful and it's too scary, the idea that our only purpose in life hasn't been fulfilled. So the idea that that had been taken away from her by the person that she loves and trusts the most is overwhelming, so she can't let herself believe it. So she forces herself to believe Joel, and just the final line is just her saying okay, which is heartbreaking. Okay.
And in the end, the only thing we can be sure of is that we understand why he did it, and we understand that Ellie would not have wanted him to do it. And that complexity is why The Last of Us as a narrative is so gorgeous. It's why it's the most beautiful story told in the entire genre of video games. It's why Neil is a genius, and it's why I wanted to make the show in the first place.